I think once you've experienced it, then you get it. Until you experienced it, it's hard to get it. It's hard to have that warm and fuzzy feeling. I've heard somebody describe it as Camino juju. And when you're on the Camino, you're walking with somebody and you have time to listen. And you have time to really get to know somebody. I really think the Camino brings out the best in everybody there. They're the best version of themselves. And the hope is that you take that back and continue to be that best person that you can. And, does it always work that way? And for me anyway. And if it was easy, everybody would do it all the time. It's a commitment and it's hard. It takes some practice walking. It takes having the right stuff and it takes preparation. But anything worth having is hard work. Whatever your Camino is, it's not anyone else's, it's yours. Whether you're walking 5 miles a day or you're walking 35 miles a day, it's not a race. It's not a competition. It's your Camino and you can get out of it what you get out of it by doing it your way.
Hello, pilgrims. Welcome to a new episode of the Way to Your Why podcast. I'm your host, Efraín Mendoza. And today we have a guest. His name is Steve Walther. He is a writer of Sacred Blisters, a book about the Camino de Santiago. And he is also a financial advisor. He was telling me that he is trained people all around the U.S. and he took a lot of flights every year. Well, he's going to tell us about that later. So welcome, Steve. How are you doing today?
I'm fantabulous. Thank you. It's such a pleasure and an honor to be here with you. I think you're doing a great job and doing great things.
Okay, thank you very much again. So can you describe so what do you do and how you started making your first Camino?
Well, I live in the Pacific Northwest in Idaho, and I've been living in Idaho for about 28 years. For work, I was a financial advisor for many years, and for the last 15 years or so, I work for a firm that I train their advisors around the country.
Okay.
Our advisors, so I travel around the country. I'm working with different associates all over the country, and so I'm lucky to get out and see a lot. But whenever I'm not at work, all I can think about is when am I going to be able to get back on the Camino next, some Camino somewhere. But I was first introduced to the Camino back in 1992. I'll make a long story short, is I had a job I didn't like after college and had a friend that had moved to Spain and told me how great it was. And I had a bad experience at work and said, that's it, I'm moving to Spain. And sold everything I owned as a 24-year-old-ish guy. Everything I owned was a Jeep, a motorcycle, and a futon, and a couple of fish tanks. I think that was everything I owned. And I sold everything, had a little bit of extra money saved up, and I moved to Spain. And I moved to the south, to Granada first, and lived in Granada. I attended the La Universidad de Granada first, Lenguas Modernas, because I thought I could speak Spanish because I took it in high school.
Okay.
I got there and quickly realized that I didn't speak Spanish very well at all. And so I took an intensive Spanish class, and I had a roommate when I was there. One of the roommates was a college mate of mine he was from California. And then we had another roommate who he was from Canada, but his family was from Galicia.
Okay.
And while we were roommates, he invited myself and another guy we knew, a Swedish guy, to drive up to Galicia to visit his family. So we rented a car and drove all the way up to Galicia from Granada. And first off, Granada and Galicia are very different. The south is very dry, much warmer, more the Andalou culture is very different than up north. So for me, it was great to see other parts of Spain. But we were visiting his family in a place called Mugardos, which is on the coast and up near Ferrol. And one of the day trips, we went over to Santiago.
Okay.
And we were walking around, and back then there weren't nearly as many pilgrims as there are now, but there were pilgrims mulling around the main square there in front of the cathedral. And I asked him, I said, what the heck's going on here? And he said, well, these are pilgrims. And I said, pilgrims, like American turkey eating pilgrims? I had no idea what any of that was. So
Okay.
he explained to me about the Camino de Santiago, and these were people that just walked various routes and back then it was almost all just the Frances. And he told me about it, and I was just blown away. I was like, this is the most incredible thing I've ever seen. And it's such a magical, wonderful place. And I said, someday I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I kind of just told myself, no matter what, I'm going to do it. Well, as time passed, I was lucky to visit Santiago several more times. Once, with going back to the story of being in Granada, I met my wife-to-be while living there. And we eventually moved down to El Puerto de Santa Maria in Jerez in far southern Spain, down near Cádiz, and got married there. And then eventually the two of us moved to the United States. And one trip back over, just her and I, we toured around and all around Spain and went to Santiago again. And I told my wife, I'm going to do this. And she kind of like, yeah, whatever, whatever. And I said, no, I'm going to do it. So a little more time passed by. My sister-in-law got married, and we went back to Spain again. And this time my folks went, and I took them there. And I said, I'm going to do this. And I think they too were all like, okay, whatever. Sounds neat, but yeah, we'll see. And then all of a sudden life happens, kids happen, we get older, we get careers, how life happens. All of a sudden I was in 2018, I was like, holy smokes, I'm turning 50 this year. If I don't do it now, I never will. So I drew a line in the sand and said, I'm going to do the Camino. And I did my first one in October of 2018.
Okay.
And I'll be doing my 8th one in this coming October.
Oh, so nice.
Yeah, so you can say that I caught the bug, and like we were talking before we got online, there isn't probably an hour that goes by that I don't think about some aspect of the Camino, whether it be planning the next one, a memory of the past one, or that reminds me of the Camino. You see things, or I'll say the funny thing with my wife being Spanish, it doesn't really interest her at all. But with that said, is every once in a while I'll start being a little cranky, and she'll say, I think it's time for you to go do another Camino.
Okay, that's interesting. Why do you see, because I have found about that a lot, that Spaniards are interested in the Camino like people from other part of the world are. So what would you see that would be that?
I'll tell you what my wife says, and then I'll tell you what I think. My wife says, "Oh, that's just for foreigners." There's a slang word in Spain for foreigners. It's called guiris, and she'll say the Camino is just for those guiris, not for But with that said, is I have met a lot of Spaniards that are very, very touched by it and are very, very much like it a lot. I have a niece that has done part of the Frances, and I have some other friends, the Spanish friends, that have done it. And then I've met some wonderful, wonderful Spanish people that have become longtime friends that I've met them on the Camino. So there are some. And then, last year there was that wonderful, and I say young lady because she really was a young lady, that she walked from Santiago. She was from Madrid, I think. Okay. She walked from Santiago all the way to the Holy Lands. She walked reverse. She walked from Santiago across the French route, across southern France, all the way down Italy. She took a ferry over to Turkey, walked across Turkey, Syria, and into Israel. This was like 2 years ago. Wow! And so there are a lot of Spaniards that followed her along the way. And I think don't hold me to this, but I think at the time she was like 20 years old. And by herself, young woman walking by herself. And there's another podcaster named, there's a couple different people that interviewed her and along the way, and it was really interesting to hear her tell her story. But so there were a lot of Spaniards and national Spanish news that followed her on her route. So
Wow,
it is
that's
very
interesting.
well known there, but it's not like here. Like I don't know, you and I that have been there, and I met you at the gathering in Canada.
Okay.
And so we're around a bunch of other people that have that experience or have that heart for it. But
Yeah.
I think once you've experienced it, then you get it. Until you experienced it, it's hard to get it. It's hard to have that that
Yeah.
warm and fuzzy feeling.
Yeah.
I've heard somebody describe it as Camino juju.
Yeah.
Camino, that magic secret sauce that you don't get anywhere else. And I do think that once you learn how to accept it and once you learn what it is, you can get it other places, but it's not the same. You can make it the same, but it's still, I think Spain is still in Portugal, and I have not walked other places other than Spain and Portugal on the Camino. So I can't tell you what it's like there. I imagine as farther away you get from Santiago, it gets watered down a little bit from the perspective of you don't have the same impact. I don't know. I guess would be the best way.
Yeah. Well, probably you convince at some time your wife to go with you, and she will change her mind.
Maybe so when my daughter was graduating from high school, we left 2 days after graduation, and her and I walked the Primitivo together. And I could think of no better way to send her off into the world after high school than to experience that. And so my daughter and I have done it. I have a son that's in college now, and the timing, we've been to Spain in the last year. We went to Spain, but I didn't have time to do the Camino. We were visiting family.
Okay.
But he and I hopefully will get to do it before he finishes college. We just haven't been able to get the time to work out.
Okay.
With or without mom, we'll do it.
Yeah. And you mentioned that you in October is gonna go to your 8th Camino, right?
Yes.
What Camino is gonna be that one?
Well, this time I mentioned that I haven't walked anywhere other than Spain and Portugal. We're starting in Biarritz and walking the El Norte.
Okay, that's in Biarritz in France, correct?
Yep. Starting in France, we'll walk a day in France and then walk over the border, eventually into Irún, San Sebastián, Bilbao, Santander, and then the northern coast. So I'm going with my sister. I did 2 years ago. I walked with my sister on the Invierno, the Camino Invierno, and then I'm going back with her. Because of work, we can't. The Norte takes about 35-40 days to do the whole thing from where we're starting. So we're going to walk about 250 miles on this one, and then sometime in the next year or 6 months or something, come back and maybe do the rest.
So you're gonna do one section this year and another one following year.
I can't get it all. I just can't take because that would really be like 5 weeks off of work, and I can't quite do that yet, but soon.
Well, that's gonna be great. That's gonna be fantastic. You're gonna have a really good time there. I have not walked the Camino, but I've been in few cities that are on that area. I've been in San Sebastián. and I've been in Bilbao, I've been in Santander. So the views over there are amazing. So you're gonna have a really good time.
I've been there in a car before, but I've never walked there either. But I'll tell you a funny story, though. An interesting story is where I live just outside of Boise, Idaho. And Boise, in this area here in Idaho, we have the largest Basque population outside of the País Vasco.
Oh.
And so there's a lot of Basque here.
Okay.
And so when I was on the trip with my parents, we drove through the Basque country and went to San Sebastian. And we drove down a sort of windy road into Guernica. And when we came down into Guernica, there was a sign there that said it in Basque, it said it in Spanish, and then it said it in English. It said, "Welcome to Guernica, sister city of Boise, Idaho."
Oh.
Yeah, I was like, who knew, right?
Yeah. You never imagine that you're going to be finding that in Spain.
Right. It was, so I'm looking forward to this trip, going back and taking a picture of that sign.
Okay, well, because already you know what it is.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
So that's good.
So,
And Biarritz is also, I believe that is also part of the Basque country, but on the other side, on the side of France.
You're right. Yeah. Yep.
Yes. Yeah, and
it's
super nice. I've been there, and the beach there is amazing. So you're gonna like it.
Yeah, I'm afraid I might get there and then not leave.
Yeah. I'm from the Caribbean because I'm from Venezuela, and I never imagined that I'm gonna be seeing a beach like that in France, in the north part of France, because that's the north of France, and it is amazing. The color of the water, everything.
Yeah, it is beautiful. That coast up there is something else. And then when you come down into Spain, it turns more like very green and colder. And when you go up to the French side, it's kind of a little drier.
Okay, and then talking about your book, what made you to start writing that book?
Well, by nature, when I hear something that's really interesting or something I don't want to forget, I write it down.
Okay.
And after several different Caminos, I came back and I said, I have all of these notes of experiences, of things I've heard, of sayings, of people I've met, little stories. And I thought, they're always going to be in a notepad somewhere, on my phone somewhere, unless I do something with them. And it was a way for me to not only catalog my experience, but also share it with my family going forward. And I didn't want to write, there's plenty of books out there about self-help and about how it improved their marriage or their life, books about the history and a deep dive into it. I wanted to make it a little bit different. And so I have, like, each chapter kind of tells a little bit of a story about the Camino, about, some of its history, but not like a textbook history book, more of kind of like, hey, there were these two dudes walking down the road kind of stuff. Okay. And then every other chapter then is something that happened to me that was a life lesson, something that came back and changed my perspective. It changed the way I think about things. It changed, it was impactful to me and opened my eyes. So those little stories throughout that are kind of mixed in every other chapter. So, and then some of the chapters I talk about, okay, what kind of food do you eat on the Camino, and maybe a little background on the food. I'll tell you one quick story about the food is, as I mentioned, my wife is from Spain. So we eat a lot of Spanish food at home and Spanish style food. And so, I love the Spanish cuisine, but there's certain things that you can only get there that you can't find anywhere else. Mm-hmm. And one day I was actually with my daughter on the Primitivo, and we were walking with these two Spanish women who happened to be from Cadiz, which was near where my wife's from. And we hit it off, and we had a great time walking with these two wonderful ladies. And one morning we were having breakfast, and have you had, that really light green, almost lime green melons that they have for breakfast there? Yeah. It's kind of like a honeydew, but on the outside, but the inside's like a lime green, but they're so good and sweet and soft, and they're so good. But we don't have those here.
Yeah.
And in Spanish, they're called piel del sapo, which means frog skin is what or toad skin really is what it means, because the outside's kind of bubbly like a frog skin.
Okay.
Anyway, I was talking to this lady, and I said, "Man, we don't have these in the United States." And she said, "You don't?" I said, "No, these melons are so good, and we don't have them." And so we finished breakfast, and that next morning, my daughter and I we got separated from the Spanish ladies, and we were walking through this little village, and we walked by kind of a hardware store, and out in front of the hardware store they had a rack of seeds, and there were seeds for sapo, the piel de sapo. And so I bought a package of the seeds, and I go, we'll take these back and we'll plant them. We'll make your mom so happy that we'll be able to have those melons at home. So we bought a package and I put them in our backpack, and away we went. So that night we met up with the Spanish girls and some other people we were meeting with. And when we went to the cafe where we were going to meet and have some drinks and something to eat, they had a little envelope all wrapped up with a bow around it. And they said, "We thought of you on the Camino today, and we got something for you." And so they had been walking on the same path we walked, and walked by that same hardware store and saw the seeds, and they bought a package of the seeds for us as a gift. And I laughed. I said, I pulled out of the bag. I said, we bought some too, but now we're going to have sapo, the piel de sapo, for the rest of our lives. And we do in the garden at home. My wife plants those, and we have them every year. And yeah, so it's kind of one of those magical things about, one of the experiences of the Camino, that I get to live all summer at home eating Camino melon.
Wow. And it tastes the same?
Sort of. It tastes really good, but if any of my neighbors have melons, they'll cross-pollinate. So they kind of taste a little more like cantaloupe here, because I think they cross-pollinate a little bit.
Okay.
But one year we've had them exactly the same, and then other years a little bit different. So I think it's a cross-pollination with the, floating through the air. But they're still really, really good.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay, then you were mentioning about life lessons, and that the Camino provide that to you, a lot of life lessons. How would you compare those life lessons on your professional career? Because you are a trainer of financial advisor across the country. So what do you think that you can take from those life lessons to take advantage of those for your work?
That's a great question, and I've never really thought about it that way. But I will say, everybody you meet in life, they have a story, and they have a unique story, and everybody has something special to share about how they got to where they are, how they got to this country, how they got to the state, to the city, how they met their family. But they have something unique that's really special. And when you're on the Camino, you're walking with somebody, and you have time to listen, and you have time to really get to know somebody. And when we first meet people, sometimes we come to assumptions, and we think people are this way or that way based on where they're from or what they look like, or different things. But the Camino's really made me want to know more about everyone I meet. Tell me your story. I want to, and it's hard, traditionally we have a hard time really just listening. We want to interject our story into their story, and we don't want to just listen to their story. And probably the biggest thing I've been able to take back to work is it's allowed me to listen better, and it's allowed me to ask questions that bring out information from people, because people want to tell you their story. They may be really closed-lipped in the beginning, and they may be closed a little bit, but once you start uncovering layers and you're becoming more comfortable, people want to tell you. And I like to listen to what they have to say. And I will say, professionally, what that's meant is I listen better. The short time that we've spent together, I'm a lot of things, but shy is not one of them. So I talk to everybody all the time and probably talk too much. But with the Camino, I think I've become a better listener. And that's probably number one. Number two is because I'm traveling so much and on a schedule and moving around, I'm seemingly always in a hurry. And the Camino's kind of really made me focus on what's important and what's not important. And whether it be work, family, or free time, is to take a deep breath and weed through all the stuff that you get anxiety about that really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you have your family, your health, and religion, wherever you stand on that, whatever you believe in and you have, but the rest of it really doesn't matter. And focusing on that rather than all of these talking heads. I don't know about you, but one of my favorite things about the Camino is turning off the news for 2, 3, 4 weeks and not listening to all of the negativity, all of the bad, all the bad stuff that happens. You never turn on the news and they say it was a wonderful sunny day today and families went to the park and had a great day. You hear that.
Never listening to that.
Yeah. And I also, I've realized that my general demeanor changes for the better when I'm able to turn all of that off, and really not pay attention to it. I'm not so negative about stuff, and that what I just said, it isn't anything new to the world. It's just the Camino is a forced platform from which you can cut all that stuff off and focus on what's important. Reflection. What can I do better when I get home? How can I help people more? How can I be a better father, a better husband, a better person in my community, a better person at work, a better person when I'm walking down the sidewalk? It makes you think about how, when you see somebody that's struggling, you jump up to help them. And I really think the Camino brings out the best in everybody there. They're the best version of themselves. And the hope is that you take that back and continue to be that best person that you can. And, does it always work that way?
Like that?
Yeah. And the magic of it is it makes us realize that we are all good. And most of the people you meet are good if you give them a chance. And the other thing, too, with regards to the negativity in the world, and the negativity, I don't care where you are, there's always political or, financial, all these bad things that you hear all constantly being you're bombarded with, is when I come back from the Camino every time, it instills my faith in humanity. People are pretty good. There's great people out there doing great things. And I come back with the realization that there is still goodness out there, and it's not all bad. And it's hard to get that in the day-to-day of our normal lives without being reminded. You maybe have to think back to the Camino and say, okay, life is pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. And the good thing about all that, when you come back and with that experience, and we are talking about, there are a lot of people that came with that experience wherever they live, because last year were just 500,000 people that got the Compostela, because they are the one that doesn't get the Compostela, and you don't know how many is. But they say that it's about 200,000, probably a little more. So we're talking about almost 1 million people that every year or the last 2-3 years have won to the Camino, distributed that through the world as a lot of people. So they are making little by little contributions on their respective communities and on their work. So, because when you mention about contribution, how I contribute better with my team or with the people that surround me in another departments as well. And when you do that, you distribute all that energy into a different department, and that help at the end on the goals that the company is looking for. So that's very helpful.
Oh, in your own home life, it makes you, we all work real hard and we come home and we just want to plop down and do nothing and not think or talk to anybody. But it makes me come home and say, how was your day today? And tell me about it. I want to learn about, what you're thinking about and what you're doing. And I don't know about you. And so I'm going to turn it around and ask you a question.
Okay.
Because this has been the experience for me and for most people I know. Were you an avid walker before your first Camino?
Not that much. And then once after I walk and I live into that opportunity, everything changed on me, even before walking the Camino. Because you know that for walk the Camino, you need to do research. It's not like I'm going tomorrow and then you go. No. You start doing research. And my wife was the one that was looking into most of the information, videos and all that regarding the Camino. And from time to time, I stopped with her and I was sitting on the couch watching one of those podcasts or videos that are made from different people. And every time that I saw something, I like it more and more and more. And before that, I also have been in San Jampi at the port because when we live in Spain, I stopped by, we drove over there for like a weekend and I like it, but not that much like when we started watching those videos. And all that passion made me to start thinking about doing something in the Camino. So the first thing that happened to me, I say, well, let's start looking for, I would like to sell travels to the Camino because with that, I can help other people to enjoy the same that I'm going to be enjoying. So I did my research. I contacted different providers. Everything went well when I went to Spain. And then I came back here and when I came back, I said, well, this is it. What I lived, the experience that I lived those 6-7 days walking was fantastic. Let's go and open the business. So I created my business. And then the other part is say, we need to do something else because it's not just about selling the travel. It's making people feel if it's something possible or no. And that's how the podcast was created and was born. And I was starting looking into the podcast to be created probably like a year and a half ago. I did a lot of practice before going to because I needed to learn all the technology, the system that we were using right now. So all that, how it works. And after that, I started looking for the first guests to have it on my podcast. At the beginning, like everything, you don't have that many people to invite to talk about it. So you have to start it with friends and people that you know. But then suddenly start appearing more and more people around related to the Camino. And we are now on the days that I already have 30 episodes that has been published, but I have like 16 more episodes that haven't been published, that have been recorded already. Wow. And I have like 10 more interviews scheduled already. So now, and everyone have a different message, a different perspective, but at the end, all are going to the same goal. So for me, every time that I talk with someone, it's like a new experience. It's like I'm learning something. And I enjoy so much how we were talking. And I see your face and you see my face what we're seeing here. And it's a fantastic way to be.
It is something that it's hard to convey to people that haven't done it, what it means and that feeling. But once you start talking to somebody that has done a Camino, whether it's a 5-day from Sarria trip or if it's a 3-month from Germany walk, whatever the Camino is everybody has that understanding, and you can't convey that feeling, that emotion that you get until you've done it. And that's what it's kind of funny. Anytime we go somewhere and somebody mentions the Camino to me, my wife's like, "Oh my gosh, here he goes again."
Just the one that have walked the Camino understand that part.
Yeah. And because I get so excited about it, and I want to share it with everybody, and I want everybody to do it, and I encourage people to walk it because of that that magic juju we talked about, that magic secret sauce that there's nothing quite like it, and the other part is, again, I think we all, part of the reason that we all, those of us that have walked it, have that feeling is because we feel good. Even when you're hurting, walking up that hill, you're accomplishing something, and you're doing something that's important, whether it's important just to you or for some reason, if you're doing it for some cause or for some internal struggle or something, you feel like you're doing something. But each day, even through the hard parts, you're getting stronger. You're getting stronger in your legs, in your breathing, in your arms, in your core, and you're getting stronger in your mind. You're getting you're thinking clearer. You're clearing out the cobwebs, and you're getting those endorphins going. And when you meet people, again, even when you just walked, 15, 20, 25, 30 miles even, and you plop down and are so sore, you do so with the giant permagrin that you can't get off your face. And for me anyway, and if it was easy, everybody would do it all the time. It's a commitment, and it's hard. It takes some practice walking. It takes having the right stuff, and it takes some preparation. But anything worth having is hard work.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I asked those questions related to the work, because I know that all of this that we learn there contribute a lot more to our daily life at work. Because I came from that world. I work for different multinational companies, and if something like that you apply as a, let's say, oh, we're gonna do a plan, we're gonna travel, a team is gonna travel to the Camino for a few days, they're gonna come totally different. And probably their strategies they were thinking when they were self-reflecting, and they bring those strategies here, it's gonna be a lot easier sometimes.
I'll share with you one real quick story to that whole thing. Is my first Camino wasn't a particularly long one, and after arriving to Santiago, I walked on to Finisterre, and it was a cold, rainy day. Been raining all day, and we were out. I don't know if you've been there before or not, but when you get out on the point, you can walk out, and there's like a tall metal antenna out on the rock. And a lot of people go out there at sunset and watch the sunset. I came into town and I walked all the way out there. Everything I had was wet. It had been raining for about a week and a half. And, I never really got all the way dry. And I'm sitting, there was a little break in the weather, and there was a couple other couples that were, they were German, and there was a Dutch guy and myself. And the two couples turned to the Dutch guy and myself and said, "Hey, would you take our picture for us?" And I said, "Sure." And the Dutch guy said, "Well, will you take mine afterwards?" So we all agreed to take each other's pictures. So we're taking each other's pictures, standing out on the point by that big tower. And then it was just the Dutch guy and myself, and his name is Peter. And Peter, I said, Peter said, "Well, take mine. I have this little backpack and these shoes. I'm going to climb up on that tower and tie them up there." And I was all right. Well, whatever this crazy guy's going to do, I'm game. And I said, "What's your story? Why are you tying those up there?" He says, "Well, I just finished." And I said, "Well, we all just finished. This is the end of the earth, figuratively and literally. We finished. It's called Finisterre, which means end of the earth in Latin. We're all just finished." And this was in October, and he said, "I started." This actually might have been September. It was either September, October. He said, "I started in June in Amsterdam. I left my house." and he'd been
Wow.
walking all that way. And I was like, holy smokes. My little week and a half trip, all of a sudden just went like this. I was like, oh my gosh, give me a big hug. So like, we're just out on the rock, gave him a big hug. I go, that's incredible. What a story. I said, what did you learn along the way? And he paused and he said, I left with a lot of questions, I've had a lot of time to talk and think about it and walk. He says, I'm now a better person and I want to go home and make everybody around me better people. And I just said, give me another hug. That was like, I still get goosebumps like feeling when he told me that, because it was
Wow.
so poignant. And in one little question and response, he summed up the entire Camino.
Yeah.
I want to be a better person, and I want to go home and make everyone around me better people.
Yeah, and everyone have different stories about that, so it's amazing.
Yeah, I just the people and the little things you meet. I met another guy one time, and again, this is what I love the Camino is you meet people that you would never meet, or you do meet them, but you never take the time to get to know them or hear their story. As an American, you may not have had the same experience, but as an American, when the Cold War ended with the fall of the wall in Germany, there was a sense that everybody that was in East Germany was freed, and everything was wonderful and incredible, and their lives were instantly better. Well, I was walking with this lady from Mexico, and we stayed in different places the night before and agreed in the morning to start from her albergue, which was on the Camino, and I'd be passing by. So we agreed to meet at a certain time. And this one particular morning, I meet her there, and she's at the door waiting, and she said, do you mind if this other guy walks with us? And he was German. And again, my name's Walther, my family's German descent, so what I'm saying, take with the greatest help. And I was like, oh, great, a German. He's going to tell me I'm not walking the right way. I was thinking, I'm stereotypical in my mind. And I was like, oh, great, we got a German guy walking with us now. And I go, yeah, sure, he can join us. And so we start walking. And this guy it turned out to be the most remarkable guy. He was born in East Germany and grew up there as a young boy. And what changed my whole thing in my mind about how the world was, we started talking about that time when East Germany became part of Germany was united. And he said it was terrible. He said 1 week we were learning Russian in school. We were learning how bad the West was. My dad had a job, wasn't a great job, but he had a job, and everything was good. The next week we're learning English in school. We're learning about how bad the Soviet Union is, and my dad didn't have a job. And in 1 week's time, his life changed that much. And it was eventually their lives became much better, but it took a long time. And again, being an American, watching on the news, hearing all the stories in school, we were like, oh, we saved the world with liberation. It wasn't all good in the beginning. Well, the story, what made it really interesting after that was the first opener. And as time went on, I learned that Sebastian had grown up in Eastern Europe void of religion because it wasn't allowed. But he was currently working in a Catholic charitable services for a school, and he was working with problem kids that lived in the school as in a dormitory and for schooling and everything. They lived in this homeschool school place, and he was like a counselor there. And worked there. He worked like 5 days a week. He actually lived there, and then he would go home to his apartment where he lived. But he was an atheist, and I learned something as I got to know him more. Is sometimes the Christians that you meet, or the folks that are whatever their religion is, that aren't always living their lives Christian-like or Buddhist-like, or whatever their background may be. And sometimes those, like Sebastian, that aren't any affiliation or on any particular team from that perspective, are the most Christian-like of anybody. And he was the kindest, nicest guy, but he was an atheist. Well, as time went on, we're all visiting, and all these pilgrims that were in our little group, our little Camino family. And this one of the mornings, we were talking about where we all were the week before we went on our Camino. And, the Portuguese guy was visiting his family in Portugal. He lived in Saudi Arabia working. And then the Mexican girl was in Ireland and came to Sebastian, and he said, "Oh, I was in Rome visiting the Pope." I said, "You were in Rome? You mean you saw him up in the window?" And he says, "No." He says, I met with the Pope.
Wow.
I said, "How did you meet with the Pope?" He says, "Oh, we had a bunch of kids we brought from our school, and the Pope wanted to meet these kids that are living in the school in Germany." And so this is the atheist in our group. The week before, he was hanging out with the Pope. And I said, "You can't make this up." I said, "What?" I said, "What was that like?" And this is what he said: "The Pope's a pretty cool dude." I said, "What do you mean the Pope?" So I said, "What did you talk about?" And he said, "We talked about soccer." Germany and Argentina had played each other in the World Cup the year before that or something, or a couple years before that. And he said, "We mostly talked about soccer." And he said,
Okay.
the Pope was a really cool dude. And so, meeting this guy, for me going like, "I don't want to walk with this guy," to now,
And you find out that he met the Pope.
Yeah, not only that, but I love him just because of his his take on it was none of that stuff's important. And the reason he was doing the Camino was because he'd heard about it and wanted to see what it was like. And he wanted to go back and take a group of troubled kids on a Camino. And he thought that would be a great way to teach them some life lessons. And I don't think he had a plan all worked out, and then COVID happened, and I think it kind of got slowed down a little bit. And I haven't reached out to him in a long time to see if he ever if he's done it or not yet. In fact, it's a good reminder that I should. But he like I said, sometimes we don't give people the chance to get to know them. We cut them off or come with preconceived ideas. I've met people from all walks of life, from all kinds of different religions, all different countries, and every time I learn something about them, obviously, and about myself. And I come home with that, really realizing I have so much more to learn, but there's so many great people out there if you stop and listen.
Correct. Well, Steve, thank you very much for this conversation today. We have been going to the end of the conversation, but has been, I believe, tremendous information that you have provided to us today. And so, any final advice that you would like to make to those future pilgrims that have not said, "Yes, I'm going to go to the Camino in the next 6 months"? So what would you say to them?
Well, first off, don't be afraid. Everybody can do it. I meet people all different shapes and sizes and ages. Practice and get ready, but do it. Whatever your Camino is, it's not anyone else's. It's yours. Whether you're walking 5 miles a day or you're walking 35 miles a day, it's not a race. It's not a competition. It's your Camino, and you can get out of it what you get out of it by doing it your way. So don't listen to anybody else telling you have to stay here, you have to do this, you have to do that. You do it your way, and you do it. Your way is the right way, and don't let anyone else try to tell you that. And I would say most for anyone thinking about it is it will change. It'll change you. And I've never heard of anybody coming back and saying, "Oh my gosh, I used to be better than I am now." The Camino's correct me. It's had everybody has a different positive shine and glow to them afterwards. And I know for myself, I yearn and think of very little else other than getting back to that shininess, the shiny people on the Camino.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing all that information, Steve, again. And for you, pilgrims, thank you for watching us today. And please make sure to add your comments to our comment sections and tell us what other topics you would like that we cover in future episodes. And that way we can take consideration about those suggestions. Thank you very much. Buen camino.
Buen camino. Thank you. Thank you for all that you do.